Good evening. I am Karen Taylor, Programme Director of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen, and a very warm welcome to tonight's lecture, which is part of the Labour, Literature and Landmark Lecture Series. The Labour, Literature and Landmark Lecture Series are supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. I would also like to express our gratitude to Thomas Donoghue, who created a very special window, so please have a look when you leave this evening. For those of you who may be less familiar with the General Society, a brief introduction. We were founded in 1785 by 22 craftsmen. We continue to serve and improve the quality of life of the people of New York City through different programs. These include our Mossman Lock Museum, which you're welcome to explore after the talk tonight, our General Society Library, of course, of which you're in, and our tuition-free Mechanics Institute, and finally, our nearly 200-year-old lecture series. I am so pleased. Now, I know you've already had a bit of a preview of Gregory Singer, so you know what a treat is going to be in store for you. Gregory is a violinist and conductor who combines distinguished artistry with an enjoyment for dramatic interpretations of the great classics. Following studies as a violinist at the Juilliard School, he began to receive frequent conducting engagements and in 2005 founded the Manhattan Symphonie. As that music director of that orchestra, he's performed numerous concerts at prestigious American venues, which include the Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall. Under his baton, the Manhattan Symphonie was chosen as a special cultural ambassadors in 2009 to celebrate the 30-year anniversary of Sino-American relations. Gregory Singer tonight, as you've already heard, will discuss different aspects. And by the way, he said, ask any question. But we will ask that perhaps you hold the questions off until the end. And he has this amazing musical career. And we're so fortunate to have this rare behind-the-scenes look at the realities of a life of a musician. It is now my great pleasure to introduce to you Gregory Singer.
Thank you very much. That was very sweet. Thank you, Karen. And well, just let me say a moment of at least give my thanks to Karen and Victoria for inviting me to come tonight and share my musical journey with you all. And that's why I do encourage questions so that you understand. For instance, let's say you've had some questions over the years you've never asked a musician. And unfortunately, tonight you're going to have to ask the question in front of the public. But you might have seen a musician carrying something down the street, or you might have wondered something about the world they're in, or why are they doing this? So really any question or this opportunity should be taken by you, even if it sounds funny. My father always told me there's no such thing as a stupid question. There may be stupid answers, but the question should be simply free and fine to ask whatever you like. I remember one time somebody asked me if the violin was hollow or not. You know, they were just curious, and the violin is not hollow. It's a top piece and a back piece with sides. And like a guitar, it's not hollow, it's open. I mean, it's not solid, I should say. So they were wondering, is a violin solid like a guitar? Some of the electric guitars are solid bodies. This is not a solid body instrument. It has a top and a bottom. But they were embarrassed to ask the question, but actually it's a very natural question to wonder about that. And with that in mind, I'm already digressing. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, what this particular white substance is that pulls the string and makes the string vibrate. Do you know, Anisha, what is it? It's a what? A horsehair. So obviously, I'm loosening it up now a little bit, this horsehair, because this little button comes out of the bottom, and you'll see a horsehair, a horse tail, the tail of a horse. So sometimes late at night, I sneak out. I have to admit, with Anisha, we go out, we go into the farm pasture and find a horse, and we snip off a few tails. And the farmer wonders what happened to the tail on my horse. But anyway, we use some whatever it is, hail? No, tail. Trim? No, it's hail. No, it's tail. Okay, anyway, I'll try to tighten this back up so I can use it later. But anyway, more people are coming in. That's very nice. And I saw someone come in I wanted to introduce also. Where did she go? She vanished already. Lynn Charnay. Where is Lynn Charnay? Oh, there she is with the hat on over there. Lynn. She's a great cabaret and opera singer for years. She's a great, great cultural icon for me. She's only 130 years old. It's amazing. Lynn, are you going to sing for us a little bit later? Will you sing for us a little something later? She's always ready. And Lois Kahn, lovely person. Well, she's a Broadway show singer, she says, but she can sing at just about anything. Especially after a couple drinks in her. No, just kidding. Well, anyway, you're also a great opera singer, I'm sure, if you want to be. Okay. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, I was talking about myself. Okay, no. Anyway, so what was the question? No, there's no questions yet. Okay. I'll play you a couple of tunes, and then what I will do is play you some video, or it'll play itself with the gentleman's help here. You'll hear and see some eclectic performances of mine around the world, and then we'll ask myself, why did I do that, and how did I survive? Okay, let me see. Play a little something. That was a little bluesy, of course. But anyway, as a contrast, so I will interject a little something here. So what I wanted to demonstrate for you was what you heard Anisha playing a scale, which is the young student working, as I once did when I was a kid. And suddenly, here I am thinking of some melodies years later. I ran away from music. I was angry at practicing. I didn't like the classical music mentality because they're all so perfectionist and down bows and up bows and this and that. And you just one could get sick of it. Some don't get sick of it. And some play these concertos 80 times a year for the last 30 years. And you wonder what's in it for them. But they have a lot of money and a lot of whatever they got in life. They enjoy that. Wonderful. I couldn't do that. So lately, I've been thinking of music. So I'll play you a couple of melodies, and later you'll hear them in the videotapes and things, whatever these things are. You'll hear the melody orchestrated to a larger orchestra. So they sounded like this. One day I woke up with a waltz in my head. It goes like this. I called it Central Park Waltz. I had the first waltz in my head. I wrote it down. Then I got a second section of the waltz, and I added to it. So that's how I compose. And I write melodies. I don't write strange music, but I can imitate strange music for you in a moment. Here's the waltz I woke up with one morning in my head. How's it go? Oh, yeah. Simple melody, thank you. And then I added a second part. Second part goes. Now I can go back to the opening. But I wrote a third section which goes. And it goes on. And guess what? Back to the top. right? So I wrote a waltz. Then I wrote another piece which sounds kind of country western, kind of bluesy. So you'll hear that. I was in St. Petersburg, Russia, because they had a very big memorial anniversary of the falling of the Leningrad siege, the siege of Leningrad during World War II, when all the people in Leningrad were under siege and being bombed and freezing to death, etc. And so I wrote this piece. I can play a little bit on the piano. I'm not really a pianist, but I wrote the piece somehow, and I will now play it for you a little bit, but it'll take only a moment. I'm sorry you spent so much energy running over here with this thing because I won't be here long on this side of the piano, but anyway, thank you very much. Thank you. So, thank you. So the piece does go on from there, and I'll just play the melody with the violin, because that's where I wrote it originally. The original melody is like this. Slow kind of a jig. So you see, it's not a cheerful kind of a jig or whatever would be an Irish type sounding piece of music. It's sort of heavy and sort of heavy. So the order's going bom, 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 bom. I don't write a lot of music. I'm not a trained arranger. I've not spent years learning how to compose. It's just when a melody comes to me based on a certain inspiration, I usually write it down when I can, and then I arrange it a little bit, and then I usually give it to some young upstart who has a computer and can put it onto the computer and put a few chords to it, and it comes out that way. And the reason why I learned to do that was sort of a mental thing, because when I learned that George Gershwin had not really arranged his own Rhapsody in Blue, because George Gershwin was a great pianist. He probably could arrange quite well if he wanted to. But when I realized that his famous, the Rhapsody in Blue, how it goes like this. Right? Clarinet. something like that. Anyway, when I realized that George Gershwin had, Freddie Groffet or Billy Green or somebody else arranging it, so I realized, well, if George Gershwin, who was a great pianist, actually had other arrangers arrange his music, his musical ideas, then I can do that too. So suddenly, when I write a little melody, like a little waltz or a little this or a little bluegrass music, I can give it to someone who's got a computer, help flush it out a little bit and put it together and write the oboe part and the clarinet part and this and that. And suddenly I've taken the pressure off myself in that regard. So I still legitimately write these melodies, and they must be good because people like them, and I do think they are solid melodies. But I don't mind getting a little assistance producing them, okay? In the meantime, I guess I'll shut up, and we'll put on some just rather random visuals and audios, and then we'll have a little more session of questions and answers if you like, okay? So a little bit, question first of all, yeah. We'll do first a little bit of a background, of my family background. My mother and father both being musicians. This is something that that my assistant Yoshiko helped me with, and Adriana, the lady in the back there, she put some of these videos together with me and for me, and I want to thank them also for that. So at random, we'll just pick a few of these titles and let them go. All the music's original to me. All the background. You'll hear my melodies with an orchestration, perhaps, in some cases. That's my father's father. My father's father's father. My great-great-grandparents. This is my father when he was a young man. He joined the Philadelphia Orchestra with Stokowski conducting at age 17. That's Stokowski standing over my father. That's Toscanini. That's Toscanini. That's Isaac Stern and Leonard Rose with my father. That's Jascha Heifetz with my father. Segovia. Fritz Kreisler. That was Jacques Francais. That's my twin sister, Lori. That's Rostropovich. One of my teachers, Sally Thomas. Chung Hwa Chung, a famous violinist. It's me in Carnegie Hall. I wrote that song also. That's how it sounds with the orchestra playing it. This is me in China. That's my billboard up there. It's a piece I wrote. Sounds Chinese. So it sounds Chinese.
It needs to be changed, I guess.
So, is it changed down?
Thank you. This was absolutely marvelous, and it's only the beginning. Now, you've shown us your lineage, going back so many generations, and one can't help wondering, when you are composing, when you are playing, do you think of your grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and so forth? Are there melodies that come from the cantorial tradition or other sources from the past that have influenced you? Just as now you have Chinese music that influences.
That's correct. It's a very good observation. I would think that Beethoven and Mozart, almost every artist or composer is influenced by someone or something they did over the previous 10, 20, 30 years of their life. So you can't really find any composer or artist who hasn't been influenced by some previous artist. Even, of course, Brahms was influenced by Beethoven, and Beethoven was influenced by Haydn and or Mozart, of course, and later Mahler may have been inspired by Brahms. In my case, we don't know much about life or reincarnation or what might be in our blood or our DNA, but it was very funny when I played this piece that goes, I forgot how it goes. The Memorial Processional. How does it go? Somebody said to me, "That sounds very Jewish." So it sort of answers something. What does it mean to be Jewish, or what does it mean to sound Jewish? It's a tough question. Is it a race? Is it a religion? What is it? But I know that when my father conducted in Poland, a lot of the Jewish musicians that were in the orchestra had changed their name to Christian names or whatever. And I remember the story where a few violinists sort of sidled over to my father and said, we actually are Jewish. And my father said, I could tell by the way you played the violin. So that means something. Again, there are stereotypes and cliches, and there are examples of what the stereotype means, and of course there's some truth to a stereotype, otherwise it wouldn't be a stereotype. But to answer your question, it's strange. I do think that when I'm in a very pure, good state of mind for a moment, not sort of hustled and bustled around, sometimes I wake up with a melody in my head. And I'm sure it's been influenced by something, and many times I have to ask myself, is it original? And so far, fortunately, they have been original. And if not, I would just say, well, I was influenced by that composer or whatever. I heard it somewhere in my childhood, but, I think my melodies are completely original, and they're not the most sophisticated, but they work, and I'm rather happy with them. Yes, Victoria?
Gregory, could you just tell us about your childhood? Your sister is also, and you have a twin sister, and she's a cellist and an actress, which is, may I say, a bit of a interesting tale with your sister. Can I?
Of course, if you know one.
Yeah. Well, in a bit of Hollywood trivia, Gregory's sister, do you remember the movie Footloose? Yes. Laurie Singer, the female lead, is his sister, the beautiful Laurie Singer. And in a very fun moment once, I went to get ice at the coffee house, and there was a woman standing there, and they were playing, and of course I saw Gregory, and I was so, when he said, and I said, oh, if you ever want to practice in the library, please come and do that. He said, oh, that's very nice. My sister and I would love that. And I was like, oh, that's Laurie Singer. So it was fun to run into her. So, but just in growing up with such a prominent musical family, how did you and your sister did you willingly get into the, music and playing?
You're excused. That was a good question. But basically, I think my sister really wanted, in a sense, to play at least the cello more than I did. She did play the piano, and I think that was part of her desire, although my mother was a fine pianist. That might have been just natural. She sat by my mother and learned to play the piano. I had a piano teacher, but I had several piano teachers, but they were very weird. And one guy kept like a cheesecake in his drawer. And between my ill-fated scales, he'd pull out, actually it was a lemon meringue pie, and he would eat it, and the pie would get stuck in his mustache, and then he would clean his mustache, put the pie back in the drawer, and proceed with the lesson. And of course, I was freaked out the rest of the lesson. And I just didn't pursue the piano, unfortunately. I wish I did. But my sister really wanted to play the cello because I did play the violin in the school orchestra. And I think, considering she was, again, motivated to practice when I was still asleep, I think she was quite motivated to play the cello. I, on the other hand, would rather climb trees and play baseball and run outside, and I was not interested really in sitting around practicing the violin much. But so in a way, we were a bit competitive, and I resented her for it. And I think some kids get attention by being A students and doing great and being the goody-goody. I was the opposite, getting attention by messing up or being bad or being restless or something. I couldn't help it because you may have noticed my attention span is about 4.5 seconds. But anyway, more questions? Yeah, a microphone for the lady.
So when you're a young student of a stringed instrument, how do you know which one you're going to want to play? Or how does your teacher know? Like, oh, well, you're going to play the viola or you're
Well,
a
if somebody was very, very tall, if somebody was really huge, they might say you should play the bass or the cello. If someone's very petite, they might say flute or oboe. In my case, I was very short, very tiny, till probably the age of 13 or something. They didn't think I was going to grow much, and I was really a squirt. Hence, I developed a certain humble, insecure personality, perhaps. But I grew much larger, but don't really realize it still, that I'm actually pretty tall. But I still have the soul of a little kid. But I think my father played the violin so well. You saw some pictures of him. And his father played the violin, and they were cantors and singers and violinists going way back to Moses on my father's side, the brother of Aaron. That I was destined to play the violin, I guess, and I did. And as I say, I broke my violin at one point, and I ran away from music. I wanted to see what I would feel like as a human on the planet without this vanity and without the artistry of being a violinist. And I lasted maybe a year or two without the violin, but it did come back to me. But I didn't like a lot of the classical music kind of dogma and rituals and hard work, etc., perfectionism. And that's why I'll segue right into my concert July 1st. I have my own orchestra, and I will play in Merkin Hall the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and Brahms' Variations and some music that I wrote. Now, let me ask something here. So you can't get this to work anymore at all? That's it? Maybe you can try. But it's very funny because the music I wrote did get developed with a full orchestra, and it sounds quite exciting. There's some different kinds of sounds and this and that, and there's a lot of interesting videos. What little I've done so far professionally as a career did take me to China and Russia and Italy, and with a lot of successes. But obviously, it's not easy to hire and pay an 80-piece orchestra, right? If you have a club date band, you can get some gigs somewhere, but you can't hire an 80-piece orchestra very often. So that's a problem, unless you hit the very big time. And that, obviously, I've not done. Otherwise, as much as I love this place, I wouldn't be here tonight. But anyway, it's great. It's great to meet you all. Any more questions? Yes, Lois? Okay.
I have a comment, not a question.
Okay.
You mentioned the Manhattan Symphony.
That's correct.
Your orchestra. orchestra.
Yes.
And I just wanted to mention, in case people want to look it up and Google it, you didn't mention that it's IE and not Y.
Okay, thank you. That's a very constructive, I appreciate this. The name of my orchestra is the Manhattan Symphonie. Now, you know how to spell Manhattan, right? It's M-A-N, no, just kidding. Okay, oh yeah, here's a little flyer. They're all over the place. But the funny part that Lois wanted me to mention was that symphony is spelled with an I-E. So it's S-Y-M-P-H-O-N-I-E. Manhattan Symphonie is, you can look us up on the computer, on Google, or what's it called, YouTube? It's a good question. The reason why I spelled it that way was in 2005 when I was invited to go to China, my first tour of China. They said I had to be incorporated, and I'm sure that was for insurance purposes. I had to incorporate my orchestra. So I did so. I know also many years earlier I was going to play at some kind of a senior citizens home, and I just made up the name Manhattan Symphony to get music out of the library. I had to have a letterhead, and so I made Manhattan Symphony, but in that case I spelled it with a Y. In this case, in case somebody has incorporated Manhattan Symphony in 1920 or in 1962, whatever it was, I just changed my name to Symphony with an IE on the end. And it's been okay. It's been a little bit of a problem to have to spell it for people all the time. But if you do Google Manhattan Symphony on YouTube or Google, I will pop up and you'll see a lot of concerts of me in various places. Question over here also?
This has been wonderful. I wanted to ask you, I hear so much about the Stradivari violin. Do you own any historical violins?
Well, historical possibly, but not of that ilk. The Stradivarius was a great violin maker in the 18th century. He lived in the early 17th century into the 18th century, and he had two sons. He personally lived to the 90s, 93, 95, something like that, and he made many instruments very, very accurate and precise and elegant. His teacher was Amati, who was a great maker, and so he had a terrific career as a violin maker. And his, in a sense, clientele that he inherited from Amati was the church and other wealthy people, the kingdoms, people of that ilk. So the instruments were preserved over the years, whereas some other Italian makers, their clientele may have been gypsies or street performers, and so the violins didn't survive. But the Stradivarius, by and large, did survive, and they were respected and maintained, and to this day, there may be 600 documented Stradivarius violins in the world. Now, somebody in this audience may be wondering, what do they go for these days? What is the value? Do you want to guess what a Stradivarius violin goes for today?
Millions of dollars.
How many? Can you give me a number? Six? She's about accurate. I'd say that's the average Stradivarius price is $6 million.
Yeah.
Some go for 10 or more, and some go for less. Now, I'm also a violin dealer by day, supposedly. And I've had some Stradivariuses in my collection to offer. And I had one Stradivarius in particular, which was the last one he made. And I was asking at least $10 million for it, and I thought it was very justifiable in absolutely every way, and it was. But they laughed at me. They almost laughed me out of the business. But a few years later, they're all 6, 7, 8, and I would think that the last one he made would be worth 10. Well, and as you know, paintings are worth 30, 40, $50 million. So an 18th century Stradivarius violin should easily be worth 10 million. Yeah, in that regard.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. We have a good turnout tonight for this Friday. I'm glad you had nowhere else better to go.
Just a quick question. We heard so much about the previous generation, your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. Now let's look into the future. Are there any generations there?
Well, there's always a generation in the future. Did you mean from my family?
Yes, please.
Yes. I have two daughters. They both play the violin, but they're not really passionate about it, and they're not really pursuing it at the moment. And I have a feeling, just like in my family, my generation, that when I'm long gone, they'll probably pick up the violin and play it as I'm inspired to play. So since my father's gone and my mother passed away recently, my pianist. But I think it's a very sensitive thing because they know I play well, and they know I never practice, and I've not really shared my personal life and my career with them because my wife is from Japan, and so there's been a different cultural interest in the family, or a lack thereof, of what I'm doing. And we're very close otherwise, but my daughters are not sort of passionate about the violin. On the other hand, like I say, they enjoy my music making, so I think it may be a bit painful because they see me struggling with my career, and they know the history, and it's not completely their history, but I think it's a very... I mean, we get along so powerfully well that I think it's very sad because they simply see me growing older. And my wife, I've been telling her, of course, one more year, I'm going to have my orchestra. They're going to hear my songs or something, you know. And she's like, yeah, great. Let me know next year. She's been very kind in many ways. But the fact is, being married to a journeyman musician is not easy. Not to mention one that's temperamental and always not thrilled by things, as you can imagine.
Thank you.
She has one boy, yes. Yeah, she has a boy. He's in his 20s, 25 or so. He's going to be maybe an attorney or something. He went to some big schools. He played the cello for a while, but not really, didn't really take it, it seems. Not at the moment. He's not playing cello these days. Yeah. Do you have it working again? Okay, can we hear some sound on that? Where is that? I don't know. Oh, that's me at a flea market. Boy, you can't imagine what turns up on this reel. That's a lady from Haiti, I think. She likes my playing.
It was not a matter of perfection, it was a matter of make base enjoyment. You either conduct or you cannot conduct. People liked it sincerely. And a little bit later in my life, I got to a point my father never saw me conduct. Every day was the same. The very first time I conducted was I ran away from classical music. When on stage, I'm looking at the floor as I walk on, thinking like,
that's
wow, this is the floor of Carnegie Hall. And then I look up to the podium.
That's my violin shop.
I jump on the podium like my father did, and I turned around, and then, pom, pom, pom.
That's my first time in Carnegie Hall. This is somewhere else.
It's a really unique place to be.
There was a manager in the audience, but he wouldn't talk to me because I had a black shirt on.
Crying, and I still do when I think about that.
But it was a 9/11 concert, so I dressed in black. He said he can't dress himself.
The love of music, and it's such a gift that it supersedes everything.
That's my mother. We played at a senior citizens home every Friday.
She has dementia.
She has dementia. She couldn't talk, but she played the piano. You see the look on her face? But her hands were playing the right chords. That's here at the library. There's Victoria.
I asked my father, how do you conduct? He sort of gave me the negative answer, how I interpreted it when I was young. It became a very positive answer, because later in life I realized my father said either you can or you can't. And in a sense, I was hearing that you can, because I could. And therefore, the last command from my father was that you can.
Can you hold it for us? Pause? Can you pause for 1 second? That's me in China. By the way, Lynn Charnay, the great singer, the cabaret singer, is asking me how, and I worked with her, actually she didn't mention it, her husband, Jacques Francais, who was... Jacques, what did I say, Jack? I said Jacques. Jacques Francais was one of the greatest experts in the violin world. He was a connoisseur of art and instruments. His father was a very famous expert in France, and Mr. Jacques Francais was famous here in New York City, and Lynn Charnay was his wife. And she's asking, did I work in the front or the back? The front is the salesperson who demonstrates the instruments and meets the celebrities. That I was in the front. In the back were the people who were tinkering and adjusting the instruments, building them and fixing them. And I don't have any talent for that whatsoever. And you'll find very few makers that play and very few players that make. It's a different part of the brain. This is me in China. I'll just tell you that I brought this young lady up out of the audience. He had no idea why she was there, and you'll see why. Now remember, I wrote this little waltz. It goes like this. And it goes to minor. So that little waltz you'll hear now with my orchestra playing it, and this young lady I pulled from the audience who has no idea. You can see how she's standing there. She's petrified. But I left the podium. That's me over here, sneaking up on her, and then I actually try to dance with her the waltz that's playing in the background. So let her roll. And I can't dance either. Here's that piece. So that's my orchestra from America in China. Now you see I should have had a microphone on my violin, right? You can see that. If you had no technicians like these guys, they would have helped me have a portable microphone on my violin. Now I just want to show you, we segued into the Aaron Copland hoedown. way, you see the little boy there in the front. That's why I left the stage earlier in the performance. You notice I went off the stage and I played for those two little kids. Well, at that point they were petrified. They didn't move, but they were bouncing around earlier, so I wanted to go down and show them some attention. And of course, it's okay. And this is in China, one of the big concert halls, so they're not used to people leaving the stage. This was what year? I don't know what year. 2014 in China. In Beijing. There's Wayne. We're playing the Mendelssohn Octet tomorrow in Brooklyn. Wayne is playing first cello. He's from China. Not him, but the other guy was from China. Yeah, next. We'll skip it around. You know how it goes. This is me in Avery Fisher Hall, now David Geffen Hall. Sister playing first cello. Not very good sound production. You can see it's not well recorded. She's from Russia. Russian collusion. We're just skipping around. Actually, we probably should stop this part of the show, right? And do some more questions if you like, or whatever. Maybe one more, just at random, one more little ditty from somewhere in the world. Oh, yeah. This is from the 9/11 Memorial Concert. This is Sibelius, I guess, Finlandia. Any more sound? That are Muslims, Jewish, and Christians in the same orchestra sitting side by side. China, Japan, Korea, and Brooklyn. She's playing tomorrow also, the Mendelssohn Octet. Can you skip ahead? Can you go ahead to the fast exciting part? She'll skip ahead to the more exciting. On the left, you see a choir. On the right, you see the male side of the choir. They're called tomo, which means friends in Japanese. It's the tomo choir, and they're joining this piece among some other pieces I wrote with choir. But this piece I did not write. This is by Sibelius. Looks like you, Richard, a little bit. And Richard Allen is here, a great architect. It's appropriate he's here in this building today. That case is useless. Go forward. Can you move the mouse over here? You can do it. Can you go further? Oh, yeah, let's go. The piece gets more exciting towards the end. I guess we missed the choir. She's from Bulgaria. I mentioned Gino because he's on a bag. I put his picture on the bag back there, which is for sale for $10. It's a new bag we have, and Gino's on the bag. You'll see Gino later. He's 85 years old, so it's not a youth orchestra, that's for sure. Two little thoughts I came up. One is I'm wearing my father's tails when I perform. I always wear his tails. And second of all, this violin is 300 years old. It's an 18th century violin from Italy, from Florence, Italy. I don't own it, but I'm borrowing it from my shop for today's little rehearsal earlier today and now this evening. So, the maker is Gabriele, his name. He's a Florentinian maker. Any maybe a last few questions or something you want me to do otherwise? Yes. She wants to sing something, maybe. Oh, yeah. I forgot the artwork. Okay, do you have 5 more minutes? I want to show you my artwork real quick. Can you get the artwork one? Yeah, this is for, you'll see my artwork. I forgot to mention.
And your titles are so pithy, so witty.
Pithy. Make sure we pronounce that correctly. Whatever it could be, but pithy. Okay, sing us a song. Come on, Lynn, sing us a song. What? No, put on a little. We're going to show you my artwork, and then maybe Lynn will sing you a song. But I'm just going to show you at random some artwork that I do. My artwork coming up. Sketchbook. Okay. Thank you, Lynn. Any music to this? No music? There should be music. That's supposed to be a cow. I wrote this music also, which I'm playing July 1st. It's called Parisian Nights. That's some of the artwork. That's enough of that stuff. Okay, thanks. The lamp post picture? Oh, yes, true. Yeah. Well, I was asked to open a kiosk, which is a circular tube stuck in the city, about 15 feet tall, and they put my artwork around it. It was my first public exhibition, first and last, but they put it up there on 83rd, and then New York One on the second day of the new year, so it's the second day of January, did a big story on it, and the gentleman who was the curator of that kiosk was standing in front of all of my colorful artwork, because you didn't see the colorful stuff, but I do some very colorful stuff too. Anyway, they did a very big story on it, but guess who they left out? They didn't mention my name or spell my name. There was nothing. So it looks like he did the artwork. And it was funny because a friend of mine told him that I was angry at him, which is so funny because I was telling my friend, and I said, my friend, you can do whatever you want. You can tell him if you want. It's up to you. I didn't think he would, but he did. And so the curator came to speak with me, and I said, look, I'm sorry, but it's not just for me and my ego, which is, as you know, my ego is quite sizable, but I said, it's for my orchestra. In other words, it's for the fact is I don't represent just myself. I have an orchestra. This would have been on New York News 1 television the second day of the new year, and I need a plug for the Manhattan Symphony. It's not just me. I'm not a great artist, but this is a New York story. I lived on the Upper West Side for over 40 years. This is what this story is about. How could you leave me out of it? Well, we did a 4-hour interview. I didn't know how they're going to edit it, and this is all a bunch of nonsense. He could have easily mentioned, they should have mentioned the artist who they focused on. The next week, yes, I know, but my manager was in Chicago, right, Lois? You weren't there to go to bat for me. And you weren't around, Len. Boy, if I would have sent you after them, they would have given up their profession. You would have taken care of them, I know that. But that's the way it goes when you're alone trying to get along in this way. And that's, unfortunately, the end of our lecture. But I was going to tell you about struggling alone in the business. And you're never completely alone because there are always some sweet, wonderful people that come to help you. And that's absolutely essential. By the way, I'll mention one last thing, and I promise you two, it'll be over. Lois is a member of the coffee house also upstairs. And when we have dinners in the evening, and sometimes I'm able to drive her home with a few other members of the club, and she has this nice little purse, which she calls a pushka. And she asks the people in the car to donate what they normally would have donated if they took a bus or a subway or a taxi home. And she collects this money. I drive them home. And whenever she gets a couple $100, she will give it to me, and I can buy music and scores of music and things. And I bought the Beethoven Fifth Symphony from my orchestra, and we're performing it July 1st at Merkin Hall. And I've written in the front of it, thank you, dear Lois, for making this music possible. So those are the things that help very much. You know, the young lady there, Adriana, has done a lot of the graphic work. Yoshiko has done a lot of work. She did the little cartoon figures floating around during the music and have been very, very wonderful. And I know Lynn and Lois and the society here, Victoria, Karen, Richard Allen, my roommate over there at my violin shop, my sweet mate, and a lot of other people here have been very supportive of me personally and emotionally and financially. Yes, Victoria, yeah. Well, it's a good question. The main thing in that regard is that, it depends on what kind of mood you're in. Sometimes you might like jazz or rock and roll, and you might like classical or something. But I'll play you a little something if you want to hear something. But we're out of time. We're out of time? Well, I'll play you one piece I like very much, and I'll play just a touch of another piece. First, I'll play you the other piece, which is by Bach. And it's a very big piece called the Chaconne. And fortunately, I will not play the whole thing because it's 20 minutes long. But when I was watching the ice skaters for the Olympics recently, I thought if these people can spend hours and hours and hours on the ice, skating around, lifting each other up and flipping around, I could sit on my butt and learn to memorize the Chaconne. It's a masterpiece. It's taken me over 40 or 50 years to memorize it because I never had the attention span. I finally memorized it, but I'll play you the first 30 seconds of that, and then I'll play you something else that I happen to enjoy playing a lot, okay? We're good for 3 minutes? That's a small piece of it. Thank the General Society for being here, protecting the building and all the lovely people and tradition that it holds. If you want one of our tote bags in the back, you can contact us. They're $10 each, and you'll notice one of those bass players is Gino.
Right. Gregory, what an absolute delight. What a treat. What a memorable night. Thank you so much for sharing the life of a musician with us tonight. It's been a really a tremendous evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much. I feel like I have made it. I have arrived. Thank you all very much. They're wonderful people here.
Right. Thank you. And although I know you have been here before, I don't know if we've made a presentation to you before, but we would certainly like to do so this evening, and to do so is our Executive Director, Victoria Dengel.
Thank you, Karen. And Gregory, thank you. You know how we feel about you. Really, you are a part of the General Society family, and when Gregory comes through the door, I think there's a pre-smile that goes on because you know something fun is coming. We love the fact you are a genius, and you're a very giving person, but you're also you laugh at yourself and you really make things enjoyable, and we think the world of you. And your symphony is welcome here anytime. And well, you're overdue for a concert here, so I'm hoping when we do have the Manhattan Symphony here that you'll all come back and because
If we come back, we want to see you. If you wouldn't come, we wouldn't be here also. So we need to have you come back sometime, and it will be fun and very important for my orchestra. Yes.
So, Gregory, our friend, the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York, founded 1785, expresses its gratitude to Gregory Singer, musician, composer, and conductor, and artist. We left that off, but your drawings are beautiful. For his participation in the General Society Artisan Lecture Series. Thank you, Gregory.
Wow. Thank you so much. Very sweet.
Thank you. We love you.
Thank you so much.
Right. And just a little memento of the evening.
Oh.
Yes. Right.
It's in the window,
Yes. Yes. Again, our thanks to the multi-talented Gregory Singer. Our thanks to you for coming this evening. I hope you will join us for a glass of wine. And I also do want to remember that remind you, there is an opportunity to see the Manhattan Symphonie play in the very near future, and that is July 1st, which is what day of the week?
Sunday.
It's Sunday, July 1st, and that's at the Kaufman Music Center, and that's 129 West 67th Street.
Merkin Hall. Yeah.
Right. So thank
That's
you
the
again
Merkin
for...
Hall.
Right. Thank you again for coming this evening. Please do join us for a glass of wine now. Thank you very much.